After Indian military's victory over Pakistan in the recent war, now New Delhi has scored a diplomatic win over Islamabad. India has showed Pakistan the mirror and accused Islamabad of bombing its own people. Indian diplomats slammed Pakistan at the United Nations Human Rights Council for the Pakistan Air Force missile strikes in Tira Valley region in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, and then to have the audacity to hurl baseless and provocative accusations against India on international platforms. In a bold move, Kshitij Tyagi, who's the counselor at India's permanent mission in Geneva, ripped apart Islamabad publicly and said, "Instead of coveting our territory, they would do well to vacate the Indian territory under their illegal occupation and focus on rescuing an economy on life support. A polity muzzled by military dominance and a human rights record strained by persecution. Perhaps once they find time away from exporting terror, harboring UN-proscribed terror groups, and bombing their own people." Unquote. So why did Pakistan use its own air force at its own village? We'll tell you in just a bit. Speaking during the agenda item 4 of the UNHRC session, the Indian diplomat lashed out at terror-infested state, saying, quote, "A delegation that epitomizes the antithesis of this approach continues to abuse this forum with baseless and provocative statements against India." Unquote. So did Pakistan bomb its own people? In a shocking incident, Pakistan Air Force carried out airstrikes on its own village in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, killing between 24 to 30 people, including women and children. This attack took place in the Tira Valley in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa region at 2 a.m. in the dead of the night on the 22nd of September. Reportedly using Chinese-made JF-17 fighter jets, Pakistan Air Force dropped 8 Chinese-origin LS-6 bombs, which are laser-guided precision munitions, on this village. A report in Al Jazeera quoted local police officer who claimed that 10 civilians, including women and children, died in the Pakistan Air Force strike, along with 14 Pakistan Taliban fighters and 2 TTP commanders. It also quoted local lawmaker Sohail Khan Afridi, who claimed, quote, "This assault by security forces is nothing less than an attack on unarmed civilians," unquote. But does this also show that the Pakistan Air Force is learning from the Indian Air Force, which during Operation Sindoor struck terror camps in 9 different Pakistani cities inside Pakistan? But while India hit UN-designated global terror groups, Pakistan's airstrike on its own village has caused quite an uproar within that country. Civilians have been caught between this never-ending battle between Pakistani military and groups like the TTP or Pakistan Taliban, which reject Islamabad's rule. The attack by PAF came a week after protests in Mingora, a city in the province's Swat Valley, where thousands came together to demand the government and its security apparatus to restore peace swiftly. Footage circulating online, shared by local journalists and social media users, appeared to show bodies lying amid the rubble, including those of women and children. Initially, Pakistan police and even the Pakistan Air Force denied any airstrike and instead claimed a blast occurred inside a bomb-making factory of the Pakistan Taliban. Police officials cited by news agency AP claimed the blast was triggered by bomb-making materials stored at a compound used by Pakistani Taliban commanders. They also accused the militants of using civilians as human shields. However, local reports and visuals of the aftermath and media soon confirmed that indeed Pakistani fighter jets had bombed the area using Chinese laser-guided bombs, which led to death of civilians. Could this be a response to a recent ambush by the Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan or TTP in South Waziristan, which killed at least 12 Pakistani soldiers and injured 4 others, underscoring the persistent threat posed by the group in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa province? An intelligence source drawing parallels with past army atrocities in the former federally administered tribal area revealed to News 18, quote, "Labeling a civilian massacre as an anti-terror operation exposes Islamabad's habitual use of counter-terror cover for internal repression," unquote. Pakistani opposition parties, along with human rights groups, have accused the state of crossing all limits of oppression and tyranny against peaceful residents. Human Rights Commission of Pakistan expressed deep shock over the killing of civilians in this bombing and demanded the authorities carry out an immediate and an impartial inquiry. Unquote. In fact, jailed ex-Prime Minister Imran Khan's party, the PTI, lashed out at the government, saying that the state has crossed all limits of oppression and tyranny against peaceful residents by carrying out airstrikes with fighter jets. Unquote. Now, on the other hand, India uses its military only as a shield against external enemies and not internal threats. National security planners feel that the army or armed forces should only be used against external enemies. New Delhi believes troops have different rules of engagement, and heavy and field weaponry leads to strong possibility of collateral damage as compared to the paramilitary forces which operate across India. It's the duty of the police and paramilitary to deal with internal law and order issues, and certainly not of the Air Force. The only instance where India used the military was in 1984 Blue Star operation, when the Indian Army had to use force to rescue and save the Golden Temple and nearby areas from a heavily armed terror group. In that instance, there was a real threat to civilians from the terror group which had seized the temple. Even in Jammu and Kashmir's case, deployment of the army is only to deal with terror groups pushed inside India by Pakistan. So it is an external threat. Heavily armed deployment is a preventive measure, as Pakistan is waging a full-fledged proxy war against India with the intention of stoking violence in the region through ISI-backed terror groups and religious extremists. So while India deploys its armed forces to protect its civilians, Pakistan is now using its own air force to bomb its own villages and people. Maybe Pakistan Air Force used this to show force after it was grounded and humiliated by the Indian Air Force, with Indian Air Force Chief AP Singh confirming that the IAF shot down at least 6 Pakistani fighter jets, and satellite images confirmed Indian missile strikes on 11 Pakistani air bases during the recent war. Coming back to India lashing out at Pakistan at the UNHRC, the development comes after a series of rebuttals by Indian diplomats on international forums. Just last week, India had lashed out at Pakistan after it cried foul over the suspension of the Indus Waters Treaty by New Delhi in the wake of the deadly Pahalgam terror attack in April this year. Pakistan-backed terror group had claimed responsibility for massacring 26 Hindu tourists in Kashmir, following which India suspended all trade and treaties with Pakistan, including the Indus Waters Treaty. Addressing a United Nations Human Rights Council session in Geneva, diplomat Anupama Singh underlined New Delhi's non-negotiable stance that terror and talks cannot go together. Anupama Singh added, "The Indus Waters Treaty, signed in 1960, was concluded in a spirit of goodwill and friendship. But the world of 1960 is not the world of today. The grim reality of relentless state-sponsored terror emanating from Pakistan erodes the environment of honoring treaty obligation." Unquote. In the end, Islamabad has itself to blame for harboring terror groups against India and for arming Afghan militants and the Taliban, some of whom have now turned against Pakistan. Leave a comment with your opinion, hit the like button, and subscribe to Inconnect News.